Competition. What do you think about competition? What feelings, what thoughts are elicited when you hear that word? For many, the word competition elicits feelings of failure, losing, humiliation, not tolerating that another person won. Not a positive feeling. But is that really true? Is competition all bad? Please join me in this important discussion. Take on the challenge, the power of competition, and discover how competition, healthy competition, actually can make us the best we can possibly be. It brings out our deepest strengths and elicits from us unprecedented successes that we would never be able to reach without it. And indeed, we should thank those that have competed with us, even those that may have won over us in a certain competition. So please join me, and you'll be surprised about the benefits of healthy and good competition. Hi, this is Simon Jacobson, and we will be speaking on the topic, Take on the Challenge, the Power of Competition. This program is dedicated by Phil Jones in memory of George Reuter. What thoughts and feelings are elicited when you hear the word competition? For many, it elicits feelings of humiliation, failure, loss, bitterness, not tolerating that someone else won. You just go back, for example, one of the earliest experiences of competition in our lives is musical chairs. I don't know if they still do it in preschools or young ages. Musical chairs, they set up amount of chairs. If there's 20 students in the classroom, 19 chairs. They start playing music. When the music ends, everyone's supposed to grab a chair, and there'll always be one left out. Then they take another chair away, it's 18 chairs. And so until there's only one person left who wins the competition. I always felt that this was a very cruel game, to be honest. I was pretty quick, so I usually made it. I can't say I won every time, but I definitely got it to the higher rounds, later rounds. But there were people that were always losing. They were just slow, sluggish. And I really felt bad because it was a competition that glaringly focused on the weak, so to speak. As a matter of fact, I remember once we were playing the game, and I intentionally slowed down, let someone else take the seat, someone who never won, just to make them feel good. So these type of experiences, for many of us, conjure up thoughts and that are not always so positive, especially if we weren't winning. I'm sure you've all heard of the concept of a sore loser. And when you lose, you're sore about it. You don't celebrate someone else's victory. And many people have that. It brings out sometimes the worst in us. As a matter of fact, I would submit that as we grow into adults, perhaps some of our negative experiences around competition causes us to avoid these competitions. I remember personally, there was sometimes a race in summer camp or in other situations, and I didn't think I could win, so I just avoided it. Because you don't want to humiliate yourself. You don't want to feel like you lost. So it really actually brings out and helps us shine the light on a part of the human psyche. Is number one is our own pride, our vanity, as well as our ability to interact with others. Can we indeed celebrate other people's successes, even if we lost in the process, so to speak, lost in the process? I remember reading the number one, I don't know if he's number one tennis player in the world today, Djokovic. think he's number 2, but he was number 1 for a long time, and he's definitely up there. And he said his success was due to his losses to his nemesis, Nadal, who recently retired or is middle of retiring. Every time he lost to him, it was very bitter, very stinging, but it made him a better player because he would review the tapes, he would review his methods, and he became better and better. He said had he not lost to him, he would never be the champion he is today. So in other words, there's a bigger picture here. It's not just the immediate. Obviously, when you're a novice and a beginner, you're going to not win over someone who's better than you in most cases. But is that a bad thing? Or on the contrary, that teaches us excellence. Are you going to choose competition that you'll always beat so you can say I won? Or would you prefer someone that's better than you and you'll learn to become stronger? The fact is, resistance is what brings out the greatest strength that we have. You can never know how much firepower, how much muscle power you have in your arm just by pushing something. You need resistance. Someone else pushes back on you, someone restrains or resists, then you see how much you have to fight. An arm wrestle, can you have an arm wrestle with yourself? So when you think of it, it actually is a force, a tool that allows us to become far better. When you're in a classroom and you have a teacher that challenges you, not just gives you compliments and says and flatters you, you're great, but says, okay, you're great, compliment, great. Now, let's take it to the next notch. As we see all competitions do that, in order to elicit more strength from within us. The sages in the Talmud tell us a very powerful statement. I'll say it in Hebrew and then I'll translate. Kinas sofrim tarba chachma. Kinas sofrim, loosely translated, means the jealousy, the envy of scholars increases in wisdom. Now, this is not unhealthy envy. This is healthy competition. When you see your colleague, you see someone else present an argument, and whatever the reason is, you feel that you don't agree. So what does that do? It elicits within you the ingenuity and the creativity to come up with a counter-argument. So the more powerful, the better the argument from your adversary, the more powerful the more power will draw out of your own mind. The concept of exertion, of effort. Effort cannot come when it's comfortable, when it's easy. It'll only come when there's resistance. Look at the power of water. No, water energy. Water can be rushing in a river at a certain speed, certain amount of power. But then build a dam, what happens? So the dam holds back the water from running, but the water starts building up more pressure and more pressure and more pressure, to the point it becomes so powerful that we tap into it for tremendous resources of energy today. To the point that the water can build up and break the dam. And not only does the water come rushing at a speed that is disproportionate to what originally had that power before there was the dam, it actually, the dam itself becomes part of that forward rush, forward thrust. This is essentially the essence of all generating of all electricity and all power. A type of withdrawing back in order to thrust forward. Look at when we shoot a bow and arrow, what do? The further back the archer goes, the farther the arrow will fly. You see this in many different sports and other activities. So it gives us a whole other take. It's not about just the immediate feelings that we may have. It's understanding what life is all about. If you're looking for a comfortable life and just always have successes, then in most cases you'll remain, mediocre, but definitely not achieve excellence. Excellence is always going to be a result of a resistance, of something that makes you uncomfortable. What do they say? They say experience is what you learn from something you don't like. something you fail at. The humorist put it this way: when a man with money meets a man with experience, the man with the experience ends up with the money, and the man with the money ends up with the experience. Hopefully. And once you have that experience, you become a far stronger and greater person. So what we're really discussing here is a bigger picture of life in general. Is there anyone that's going to live a life without challenges, without resistance, without setbacks? It's impossible. But it all depends on how you look at the setback. If you look at it as a stepping stone, as a springboard that can propel you to greater heights, then you wouldn't even call it a setback. It's part of the process. You need to draw back in order to go forward. The mystics, the Kabbalists, describe the metamorphosis of one state into another. That whenever there's a true paradigm shift, it cannot just be that the past flows into the future. You need some type of abrupt, I don't know if the right word is abrupt, but you need some type of break, some shift. Or else you just have an extension of the past. What they call it is this. There's a yesh, it's a Hebrew word for meaning a state of being. Then there's the new state of being, and in between comes a void. So yesh, and in between is an ayin. That's the word, ayin, a void, a vacuum. That's critical for the process. A seed is planted in the ground, then it deteriorates, it rots. You can actually see the process if you look closely, or you put it into a plant on a window or something like that, an experiment. It rots. Why does it have to rot? Why can't the seed just remain intact? Because that's the metamorphosis. A caterpillar goes into the catharsis, goes into a chrysalis, not catharsis, chrysalis, cocoon, to become a beautiful butterfly. And it's a necessary process whenever there's any growth. We all go through the awkwardness of adolescence. A mother will go through the birth pains and pregnancy pains to give birth to a new child. Creativity is a child of frustration. The greater the creativity, the more the frustration that precedes it, the more the confusion. Why do we need confusion? Because as long as you're still in the old paradigm, then whatever happens, it'll be an extension of that. You want something new, there has to be a shift. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. What do they say? Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. The way I often put it is, if you think what you thought, and you say what you said, and you do what you did, you'll have what you had. Mathematical certainty. Cause and effect, action, reaction. I must have shared this, my own personal experience. I remember when I was a kid, summer camp, summer country. And I knew how to swim relatively fine, but I wanted to learn how to dive. So I went on the diving board one fine morning, and I just could not bring myself to jump. Too much fear inside of me. I didn't know what it was. So I said, okay, I'll try it again later. I started the countdowns from 10 to 1, then from 100 to 1, then 1,000 to 1, A summer passed, I never ended up diving. Next summer, okay, I'm a year older. And what was the problem? I knew how to swim in the water. It wasn't like fear of going into water. What will happen? I have a belly flop. What can happen? I'm here on the ground. Jump into the water. So I decided I won't go on the diving board. I'll jump from the edge of the pool. Not such a big jump. Even that I was afraid of. So finally I said, I'll sit down at the edge of the pool and I'll just drop in. And it was not easy until somebody did me a favor, which I didn't see as a favor at the time, snuck up behind me and pushed me in. While I was doing one of my moves and one of my countdowns, among many, pushed me in. And that was it. After that, I dived. I went back to the diving board, tried different types of dive, the swan dive, the swimmer's dive, and I always wondered, what was the challenge? What was the problem? The problem was the ayin, that middle vacuum place, my theory. Standing on the ground, I knew all about. very comfortable. In the water itself, also comfortable. But that split second where you're not on the ground and not in the water, so subconsciously, it was like a place it's not a space that you occupy, suspended. My theory, I never proved it, I didn't do studies on it, but I believe it's true in all our lives, that comfort zone, to move from one to the other is difficult, but it's what makes us grow. So when you think of it that way, competition, and look at it. I remember in summer camp, I remember in other situations, athletic competitions, writing competitions, spelling competitions, it brings the best out of you. So if you want just comfortable, you want to just be complimented and you have a sense of entitlement, you always want to win, then yeah, competition is not something you like. But if you want to live life to the fullest, reach your maximum, you're going to need resistance. And resistance includes playing and competing with someone else. Whether they're an equal or they're better is the key. Because that will bring out the best in you. So it really teaches us about life itself. And competition doesn't always mean a contest. Competition means even at work or with relatives and friends and siblings. There's sibling rivalries. So as long as they're healthy, and we'll talk about the healthy part in a moment, then they bring out the best. When you see little kids fighting with each other, and the second later they love each other, it's not coming from a bad place. It's part of learning to test the waters, to see what you're made of, to see what others are made of. It's part of the social interactions that shape our lives. We are social creatures. We are social entities that thrive on relationships. Relationships is not just having someone agree with you and just doing whatever you want. Relationship is a give and take. It's a partnership. Whether it's siblings, friends, classmates, or even strangers. And of course, spouses. So then why does competition have the other side to it? Why does it often bring out the worst in us, the fears? And why can people very often don't get along? And competition doesn't seem to work in that situation. The issue is not the competition, the issue is who you are. It comes down to self-confidence, self-esteem. Obviously, an insecure person is going to find it more difficult to compete. Because if you're insecure going in, then you're going to feel, hey, what happens if I lose? As a matter of fact, your lack of self-confidence will probably contribute to not really giving it all. There are many people who don't try to give it all because they can always say, I really didn't try as hard. Some type of justification, like almost a prefabricated justification why I may have failed. Of someone who's demoralized, someone who feels down at the outset, can they really wrestle with another person? Can they really bring all their strength? So it's not the competition that's the problem, it's the issue of the insecurities that many of us have. And that's why it's even more important to take on the challenge. It's very easy to retreat. Then you don't have to face the challenge. I remember the first time I was invited to give a public talk. So I've been giving classes, I knew how to communicate, but it was not that easy. I was looking for excuses, to be very honest. Maybe they'll change the date, and maybe this, and maybe that. I finally ended up doing it. Was I at my best? Not necessarily, but I did it. You have to go into it. What do they say? The greatest risk of all is not taking a risk. You have to get into the water. And I've said this to many people who I've counseled. Come to me, I don't have the confidence, I don't know if I can do it. That's never a good attitude. It's natural, and I understand it, and I can justify it, explain it, but it's not an attitude of growth. Do we have to force someone to go there? Sometimes. Look, does any child want to go to school the first day? Who doesn't cry? Or go away to summer camp, to sleepover camp, and so on? It's not comfortable because you are comfortable with what you have. You don't want to meet necessarily new people. Again, not because something bad about you. That's the nature of the beast. Like the word beast, the nature of the human being, the nature of our lives. However, think of it this way. You're sent and put into situations where you face that type of competition, where you face others who may be better than you. There are many students who excelled in their class and then they moved to another school, to a higher school, went off to university, and suddenly they were in a class where they were not the best. And in the beginning, it can be very difficult. Because for years, you were always getting all the awards and the accolades, always getting the best marks, and now you're sitting in a classroom where people are equal to you or better. So you can take it two ways. You can retreat and give up, or you could say, you know what, let me rise to the occasion, let me try harder. But that takes exertion, that takes effort. But exertion brings out the best within us. In Hasidic teachings, it talks about an analogy. It uses an analogy to talk about two states of the superconscious. How do you draw from your deeper superconscious, what some call the subconscious, I like to call the superconscious, into your conscious experience? So the analogy given is the comparison of a hot coal and a flintstone. A hot coal and a flintstone. Both of them produce fire, but very differently. A white hot coal, when you look at it, it may look like it's burned out. You may not see any flame. But when you get closer to it, and definitely don't want to touch it, there's a tremendous amount of heat in there. You put it in water, it will extinguish the coal. So what do you need to do? You need to fan it. You fan it. A wind, and the flames start coming out of the coal. In a flintstone, very different. In a flintstone, you could hold it, you won't get burned. You could put it in water, nothing will get extinguished. How do you elicit sparks from a flintstone? You have to strike it hard. It's not enough to fan it. You have to strike it. And when you strike it, the sparks come flying. So what they explain is this. When you want to reach a certain level of your superconscious that's closer to the surface, you need to fan it. You need some effort, but not extreme effort, because the fire is there, it's just concealed. The sparks in the flintstone are not there. If you open up the stone, you're not going to find sparks. But if you want to reach there, you need to strike it. But when you do, you reach a far deeper level, because the exertion, like I said with the competition, the restraint, the thing that is holding you back, forces you to dig deeper. And when you dig deeper, you reach deeper levels of superconsciousness. This, my friends, is the story of life. And we have to embrace the effort and the exertion. Don't look at it as a necessary evil. Look at it, that's the process. That's exactly why you need exertion, because you want something new. And something new takes effort. What you had yesterday, the effort of yesterday was enough. You want something new, you're going to need new efforts, new exertions, new sweat. And sweat is not something we like, but that's how we achieve things. I read an article once about a guy who was going, top executive was going, top dollar he paid to go on these weekends. They were called the Iron John weekends. This is something going on in the 70s, maybe it still goes on. Men would come and bond together. They'd wear skins. They'd grunt, sweat, climb up mountains to get in touch with their masculinity, with their testosterone, with their energy. Back to the caveman. So this executive come back from a very exhilarating weekend, all rejuvenated. He's sitting and speaking to his colleagues and some of his workers, and he's telling them what kind of powerful experience he had. He was sweating and so on, but it brought out this deeper energy within all of them. So one of his workers, who was like working in the construction department, says to him, "Boss, if you want to sweat, you don't have to pay all that money. Just come down and work with us. Come down to the construction site and work with us one day under the sun, and you'll sweat." He says, "No, I don't have time for that. This I have to plan a weekend when I have time, when it's scheduled." So the worker says to the boss, he says, "Boss, if you sweat when you want to sweat, it ain't sweating at all. It's when it's like the experience. You get what you need when you get what you don't want to get. That's what's, in other words, you don't want the sweat, and that's what brings out the best in you. Sakina Sofrim Tar B'Chachma, the competition of scholars, the envy even, healthy envy, which is built on growth. In other words, don't be driven by your insecurities. We all have our fears and insecurities. That's a given. But don't let that be your defining force in life. Don't let it be the force that drives your decisions. Understand we have it, tame it, keep it at bay, and allow the other part of you, which wants to excel, speak up and say, yes, every form of success may lead to a possible failure for the moment. That may be something I won't get what I want, but when I don't get what I want, I'll get what I want. I'll get the experience. I'll learn something. I'll learn from my mistakes. I'll learn from the best how to improve things. And yes, to reach heights I could never have reached without it. And then you can thank your competitor. To conclude with the story of Rab Mendel of Kotsk, Nachum Mendel of Kotsk, Kotzker Rebbe, who was a sharp-witted individual. So one day somebody in Kotsk comes to the Rebbe and says to him, to his Rebbe, and says, I have a problem. I run a business in Kotsk, and it's doing quite well, and now I have someone who's opening up in Kotsk a similar business, competition. And I like the Rebbe to tell him not to do it, because he's going to cut into my profits, a competition. The Rebbe said to him, did you ever see when a horse goes over to drink water at a lake or a pool or a river? What's the reason when the horse comes close to the water, what happens? The horse begins to stamp its feet, like angry, and then it bends down to drink the water. Why? Why is it stamping its feet? Rhetorical question. And the Kotzker Rebbe said, the Rebbe of Kotzker said, because it looks into the water before it's about to drink and sees another horse. A reflection, of course. So it gets angry. Another horse is coming to drink my water. So it begins to stamp its feet to scare off, frighten off the competing horse. And then the horse realizes there's enough water for both of us. That was his response. Competition will bring out the best in you. You'll find your unique niche. Don't ever be afraid of it. Now, it should qualify. There is a concept of unhealthy competition, unfair competition. And that is another discussion, but that's not what we're addressing here. So my friends, compete well. Know that you have within you unbelievable strengths. Go with that confidence. And let the resistance, let the challenge bring out the best in you. Take on the challenge. Seize the day. And may you achieve the greatest heights possible. And you, in turn, will bring out the best in others around you. Thank you. Simon Jacobson of the Meaningful Life Center, meaningfullife.com. Please subscribe to our growing YouTube channel. Please share with others. I'd love to hear your thoughts, feedbacks, questions, comments. And yes, challenge, rebuttals, so we can spar in a healthy way and bring out the best in each other. Be well and be blessed.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.